Welcome, Sandra. It's amazing to get to talk to you today. We're going to be talking about the feeling of cancer, a psychotherapist's story of living with incurable cancer. I just want to say thank you so much for coming and talking about this. It's a very deeply personal subject with some very intense subject matter. So thank you very much for agreeing to speak to me today.
Thank you. You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Not a problem. So here's the book. It's absolutely fantastically written. I flicked to the first page and I was just taken by how well and how easy your words flow. I think in a story like this, it can be a little bit stunting sometimes for people to want to get into it, but this really took me in completely, and I just wanted to keep reading and keep reading. And I have a feeling it's something to do with the fact that you have a degree in English literature. Is that correct?
Could be. It could be. Yeah, I think when I realized I wanted to write a book about what I was going through, what I'd been through, I thought I want to write the best book I can. And having an English literature degree, I know what a really good book feels like when you read it. And it's to do with the language evoking experience as well, so that you don't even realize what the language is doing. It, like you say, it draws you in. I would agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I also wanted to say, like, the feeling of cancer, like, it's a really powerful title. Also, like, a psychotherapist's story of living with cancer. I honestly didn't have very much of a broad idea of what a psychotherapist is. So I was just wondering, can you tell me a little bit about what a psychotherapist does?
Absolutely. I was a psychotherapist for 15 years. I did a master's in psychotherapy in Auckland again. And psychotherapy is a sort of, you get into a relationship with someone who's struggling with something in life. It can be anything. And it's like counseling, but a much longer, deeper process usually, because what you're looking at with that person, you look at their behaviors and their emotional life together to try and make sense of the situation they found themselves in. And often we're looking into the past to see what they're repeating and where their behaviors have come from and what's happening now in the present. So there's a lot of deep work around trying to find out what's driving the patterns of behavior and feeling that they're struggling with. So that's psychotherapy in a nutshell. It's a working relationship.
And as someone who's used to helping others understand their feelings when dealing with a crisis, did you find that your profession benefited you, or did you need to find other ways to cope with this new information and the living circumstances?
I couldn't have written the book if I wasn't a psychotherapist, because I kind of used myself as a case study, as if I was writing about a client. It benefited me hugely because I think I already have the language for the feelings, because the book is about having a language for feelings, because the other part of psychotherapy is having a story. We all have a story about ourselves. People come with a story in the first session and they want to change the story. And the whole ending of my book is about telling a new story about yourself. You can't do that if you don't have the language for the story that you're in. Does that make sense? You need to have the words for your emotions and experiences. And that's where we get stuck with trauma and dissociation. We are not able to put things into words in a meaningful way. And that's where the writing helped. And I think I already had the words. And what shocked me at the beginning when I got my diagnosis was that how overwhelming and confusing it was. So I started writing about that, and it just tumbled out of that. But I definitely was kind of looking at myself as if I was in a client relationship and trying to talk about what I would want to say to someone if they came to me. And there was so much to say. I could have written 2 books, really. But yeah, it was amazing how much was still in my memory banks as well. Once I got tapped into the feelings, most memories are stored as feelings. We think they're events, but they're actually the feelings stuck inside of us, especially trauma. Once you unpack the feelings, you begin to unpack the trauma. You begin to deal with it and process it. Otherwise, it's buried deep inside and it keeps causing problems in our lives. So yeah, I couldn't have written this if I hadn't been a psychotherapist. That was the whole, I suppose, at the beginning, when I was toying whether to write it or not, I thought I could write this because I am a psychotherapist. I'm a sort of person who could shine a light on this experience in this particular way. So yes.
Oh wow, perfect. Yeah, I can definitely understand that. If you don't have the words to go with the feelings, it's impossible to explain how
Yeah.
you might about things or how you might deal about it, and even
It,
more impossible to write about it.
it's very common in the cancer world for people to go to support groups and talk to people online, and often they just don't have the feelings, the words for the feelings. They have the feelings, sorry, but not the words because they're so painful and difficult and new quite often. I mean, we're talking about things like death and mortality as well as trauma and depression and all of those sorts of things, that huge amount of anxiety. But people don't feel they have the right to talk about it either because there's a lot of pressure to be well and to be positive in the cancer world.
Yeah.
So being
Oh my
honest
goodness.
is hard about your feelings. It's hard.
You mentioned in your book as well that it was more than just the physical and emotional challenges that cancer created for you, but your identity was also affected too. How did you go about maintaining your identity after the diagnosis?
Yeah, I think identity is a complex thing. I think who we are is made up of so many aspects of our lives. And when you get a diagnosis of something that could kill you and is incurable or will kill you one day, just to be blunt, it just skews everything off into a different direction. It limits your life. It affects not just your past because you start thinking about all the things you've done and whether you wish you'd done things differently. There's a lot of that in my book. There's a lot of you think about regret and remorse and relationships and things. You also think about the future and what that might look like and how much can you really imagine a future when you don't know what your future is going to be anymore because your body is letting you down in this way. So, it's all very well talking about mindfulness and being in the present, but I think that is the key. So I think your identity is just thrown off course. And I think it was my favorite quote is by Stephen Fry, who said, "You're not the sort of person who gets cancer." That was his first reaction to being diagnosed with cancer. Who is the sort of person who gets cancer? It becomes something you don't want to own, but you can't avoid it because of the treatment and just everything it throws at you. So, being a patient, being a sick person, being ill, very dehumanizing experiences in our world. And I think you have to reassess who you are, who you want to be. I had to give up my work, sadly. That's part of the book. And that changed my identity hugely because I didn't expect that to happen. And it was a big part of who I was. It still is a big part of who I am. This is, partly why I wrote the book, so I could maintain that connection with my reading and my work. And I still talk to people a lot about emotional stuff, but prioritizing things like self-care and self-compassion, and not just in a sort of meme way like they are online, but actually doing some practices around gratitude, self-care, delving deep into what that means. Again, that's all in the book. Meditation, keeping up with my music because I'm a singer and a pianist, and actually looking at my life and thinking, I'm going to have to let some things go here because I'm not that well anymore. What do I keep and what do I just let go? Really prioritizing the important things. That's all a process that I'm constantly in. And that process never goes away. So I think that's how I've retained who I am. And in a way, it's a kind of compass for your life, isn't it? Finding new ways of operating. It's a real challenge because you don't always want to let go of the things that you can't hold on to. Like I have a lot of fatigue, so I don't have the energy for a lot of things. I can change that a little, but I can't change it a lot. So there is a lot of loss involved in grief around letting go of the things you can't change. So that's a very long answer to how it affects your identity. It affects everything around your identity and who you are.
Oh,
Yeah,
completely.
everything.
I understand that. Yeah, it must be very, very confusing at times, but knowing
And
that you
confronting.
and very confronting, definitely. But
Yeah,
it's very. I think that your answer is very good to let people know that maybe you can't do everything that the way that you wanted to do it before, but you
yeah,
can make slight adjustments and still maintain that part of your identity in smaller ways. So
yeah.
I think that that's very useful to know. Um, Yeah, so writing this book, that's so heavily personal, must have taken its toll. But did you ever find it cathartic in a way as well? Like,
Oh yeah. I think because of my training and my work, I wrote some of it was very painful to write, obviously, but and I did get distressed and cry, and I do a lot of writing in the middle of the night, and I need peace and quiet, nobody bothering me, and that's when I do my thinking. I've always been a bit like that, so yeah, it was painful to write, but it wouldn't have been an honest book if it wasn't. And I know that that sort of pain is cathartic. Cathartic's a funny word, but yeah, getting that kind of release from your feelings is important because of the and afterwards, it's like when you have a good cry afterwards, you know something's being cleared out. You feel that relief. Yeah,
yeah,
the heaviness goes and the feelings start to evaporate a little bit, and it's that kind of feeling. But I did have to write passages of it, particularly the bit where I was in intensive care. I had to be in the right kind of frame of mind to write that. I had to have a lot of time to myself to relive that event and to go through it again and remember it, because the memory is all about the smells and the touch and the noises. And I had to actually get myself, I play a lot of classical music and I sit in this little study of mine, and I had to really immerse myself in a kind of zone of memory and recreate something. And then when I would put things on paper, I would think, I know when it's right because I feel it in here. I would think that's almost right, but I haven't got the right word for that. I need another sentence. Before my editor got hold of it, it was a lot more poetic. It was more like
right.
poetry because it came out in kind of little snippets of words and phrases. But I wanted it to flow like a book when I published it, so people could, like you say, move through it easily and get the feelings. But there was a lot more poetry in it, and a lot of associations. That was how I
Okay.
wrote a lot of it. Yeah,
It makes a lot of sense because obviously poetry is very in the moment, in the feeling,
yeah.
and very abstract as well. And I think that with a subject like this, it is very emotive. So yeah, it makes sense that you've yeah, that it was written kind of in a poetry style. So that makes a lot of sense
Yeah.
to me. Yeah, I think I also just wanted to end on a positive note. This whole interview has been amazing, and you've been very upbeat and
Oh, I could
doing
talk
something.
forever about my book. Love it.
I mean, it's just it's wonderful talking to you. Honestly, I wish I could just talk for a lot longer. But I wanted to end on like something that maybe other people could take away if you're
Yep.
going through something like this as well. So I'm just wondering, what are the things that have helped you when you're feeling overwhelmed? Because I can imagine that you'll have your good days, you'll have your bad days, but is there something that you tell yourself when you are feeling overwhelmed that kind of brings you back to a more peaceful state?
I wouldn't say tell myself. I think I have things that I do. I listen to a lot of music, and I have Spotify playlists, and I sit on the sofa and listen to music when I'm overwhelmed. And I cook as well. I love to cook. And so I do a lot of chopping of vegetables and herbs and, make things with spices. And I like to do that. I like to be in the kitchen, and I like to sit on the sofa and listen to music. And if I'm overwhelmed, I often wonder to myself, am I trying to deal with something that I can do anything about? And if I can't, then I have to try and let that go. And if I can do something about it, what can I actually do? Is it because I'm doing too much? Is it because I'm expecting too much? Is it because I'm feeling a little bit hopeless, which is a common feeling, I think, underneath the overwhelm about everything? It's 10 years almost to the day that I was diagnosed. And at the time I was diagnosed, there was a sort of 3 to 5 year um, life expectancy if you weren't doing too well. So more than that, but not so much 10. So there are new drugs coming on board. And nobody really knows what's ahead. I always remind myself of that. Nobody really, really knows. We think we know. Even I think I know what's coming next, but I don't, because the drug I'm on at the moment didn't exist when I first was diagnosed.
Oh
So,
wow.
so I'm on a drug that's funded by Pharmac. I'm very lucky. I've been on it for 4.5 years, and I'm still here, and I'm still doing really well. So that wasn't in the picture at the beginning. So not to second guess would be my advice. Try not to second guess and do the things you love. And everything just gets a lot easier when you do if you can do the things you love.
Well, Sandra, thank you so much for agreeing to talk with me. It's been very
Thank you.
enlightening. I'm loving your book. Like I said before, the writing is just absolutely phenomenal. I'm not usually the biggest fan of the non-fiction genre. I'm more of
Yeah.
like a bit of a fiction. But this is just, I really encourage anyone who's interested in the subject or knows someone, like you said before, if there's someone in your life struggling with this kind of emotion, please read it. It's just, it will help you, it will help them. It's just fantastic. So
Thank
thank
you.
you so much
Thank,
to me.
thanks,
And,
Gabby.
you're
Hey.
so welcome. Okay, thank you. Bye.
Bye. Bye.